This conference will now be recorded.
Are you guys seeing my desktop with all of the icons on the left? Or are you seeing Blue Cherry?
All the icons.
The icons.
Thank you. All right. So we are back to design development. I'm going to bring up training agenda real quick. Do we have any questions from what we went over so far?
Do you think that we could go through the searching again and filtering?
Yeah, sure.
Because I'm lost with that.
Okay. Yep. Let me close out of a couple tabs here. I'm playing around in your environment while we were waiting. I'm actually going to switch screens because this is I'm on my laptop screen here, so it's a little condensed. So just bear with me for a second. Flip over. There we go. Much more space. Okay, so let's go over filtering really quickly. So to get back from this screen to your filter, all you're going to do is show filter. And also hit Control F as a hotkey. Anytime you toggle over any of this stuff, like you'll normally see the hotkey present itself. So if you get really good about this, since you guys are in here for a while, the hotkeys are really helpful. So you can hide your filter or you can show your filter on the ribbon. Once you get over here, these are all of the fields that you can use to filter for items within Blue Cherry. You'll see as we go along, I'll just click into one of these as an example. So each of these tabs, when we go to show filter, corresponds to one of these tabs within the tech pack. So you'll see there, the PLM design is your design info and your header tab that we already went through. Design detail is also a tab within Design Master. Evaluation, colorway, vendors, and design delivery codes is a bit of a catch-all. You won't see a tab that coordinates to that. But if you're looking over here, here's your PLM design info. You'll see detail, colorway. It's mirroring it. You're essentially saying I want to search for something within that tab. Most commonly, you guys will use this PLM design. These are all the fields that you can search on in the tech pack, and a lot of those are on the design info in the header. The most common one that we'll use is going to be probably short description for you guys. So for instance, to do an example here, to go down to short description, and this is part of the reason like why you have to scroll through this stuff is why you would build like specific templates. And what we would do here is you would launch the filter builder, and this is something that your admins, I think being David and Melissa, will be doing. They will go through here and essentially limit all these fields so you don't have to scroll through. Maybe you guys have 10 fields that you consistently want to search on, and they can limit that to 10 fields so you don't have to scroll up and down. So let's see. I want to find description or short description here. And then using the asterisk symbols is probably the easiest way to do it. So I would put asterisks and say I wanted to look for that Halloween placemat. I know that in the name I entered Halloween. So I can just put asterisks around Halloween, hit enter, and it's going to bring me into the Halloween placemat design because it doesn't find any other record. If it found multiple records with Halloween in it, you would see it listed out here in that grid view. You can also do the same, so to clear a filter, you can clear it. You can also do the same type of thing on your merch group. So product category, here's the same lookup field that you're going to complete on the Design Master. So you can use that lookup table and say, I want to see all the designs that fall under the product category of tabletop. When you enter a filter value too, it drops, it puts it to the top of the list, so that you don't have to scroll through and see like where a value is randomly assigned in here. So if I click apply or enter, it brings me to the design that is listed in the merch group as a tabletop, as tabletop within the product category. If there were multiple designs again, you would see them listed here, and then you could click through them. And that's where that top, bottom, previous, next starts to come in handy, because you can flip through your search results. Is this making a little bit more sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. I guess I just can't use it properly because I'm in test and there's nothing to look up.
Yeah, we don't have, I just emailed Maxim. We don't have access to the training. He originally set up test. So once he sets me up in test, I'll set the rest of the users up.
Got it. Okay. It'll be a lot easier to play around once you guys have access to this kind of these example data that I've started to build out. Here's the example too. Before we leave this, like the active OK, that's that same active field that's on the design header or design info up here. So you go back to show filter. For flag fields, it's either a yes or a no for those fields. So if I wanted to look for all of the ones that are marked as inactive and I hit apply, it says no data found for that criteria, because all of these designs you can see here, they're marked as yes for active. So it won't find anything. If I go the opposite and I do, show me all the ones that are yes, it'll pull the 3 designs. Any other questions on filter before we move back to the Design Master? Okay, so I'm going to go back to my vinyl rooster tablecloth. And I'm going to go ahead and jump into the next tab, which is the Images tab. I'm going to go ahead and hide my ribbon too, just for some more space on my screen. When you go in here on the Images tab, this is where you guys are going to add images relating to the finished goods design, meaning the primary image, which is listed here, spec images, color reference images, think construction images, maybe even label and package images if you guys so choose to do so. How you add a new image here is you would click New, and you would go to this type of button. You would click out, and it will take you, we'll set this up so it will take you guys right to your existing X drive, and you can double click and it uploads that image. Now, in order to save this on the Images tab, the DZ image type is required. So you're going to right click and you're just going to categorize that image. The reason why we use this is because when you guys categorize these images and we go to create a PDF printout of this Design Master, which will essentially be your technical specification pack or your tech pack that you send to your vendors, we're able to print some of these images, all of these images, or we're able to sequence them and say print all of the spec images or your construction type images together, print all of your color reference images together, and always make my primary image not just the image that shows up as my thumbnail here, but also kind of your header image or your main image on your tech pack. So for this one, I'm just going to go ahead and choose a spec reference here, even though that wouldn't be the correct entry to it. Maybe this is better as like a color reference image type of thing, but it's not a great example. And then we could save from there. If you want to import multiple images, you can open up multiple. So let's say I know that I've got 2 more images that I want to open up. You can open up as many new image boxes as you want, and you can hit that ... and you can drag and drop them. So you don't have to do this over and over again. Just pull them all in at once. The other thing that you can do with the Images tab is you can do items per row. So you can have, I don't even think there's a limit here. You can have as many images as you want. Like, be mindful, because obviously if you're adding 30 images, your tech pack's going to be really big, but maybe 30 images are warranted. I don't think that's ever going to be the case with you guys, but you can then change these so that you're only showing 5 per row, and that changes the size of the image that's displayed on your screen. So if you wanted to see all of them, then you'd see more and more images coming across in a row. If you want to delete an image because you've incorrectly drag and dropped the wrong file, just select the image. You can see which one you're selected on because it's highlighted in that gray color, and then you just click delete. If you wanted to make a different image, your primary image reference, or you wanted to make your thumbnail change, then that's where you will go ahead and select it to move to the left. Your very first image becomes your thumbnail. And you can see that when I save this. See where I also got this handy dandy arrow that says image type is required. So I'm going to flip this over and do my primary image. I'm going to change this one over to a color reference. And you can hit Control S without even accessing the ribbon, or you can go up here, show ribbon, and click Save. And now when I refresh this, you should see now my thumbnail has changed to that new primary image. When I go back in, you'll see my thumbnail is now reflected as your company logo. I think it is worth mentioning here that the way that Blue Cherry works, because we're all about speed, eventually you guys are going to have thousands of designs in here, and you're going to have lots of images associated with each of those designs. So if you take into consideration the need for speed for you guys, really, I'm going to make this bigger so that you can see it. What Blue Cherry is really doing is every time that you guys are attaching an image in here, what you're really doing is you're linking the image. You guys will see once we have your X Drive set up, in image description, you'll see the path of where that image is placed. And it'll say X Drive, folder, you know, kind of outlining where that image is. It's actually only linking it because if we were to attach it, you'd have a storage issue pretty quickly. By linking it to your X Drive, we're able to populate it much faster and keep the speed of Blue Cherry exactly where you need it. Then you use the PDF printout, which we'll walk through later, to send it to vendors. That's essentially taking like a screenshot of the image. So we're able to very smartly keep the system running as fast as you need to run your business on it. Any questions on images before we hop to the next tab? It's pretty simple.
So what happens if we change the location of that in our X Drive, or if it gets deleted? Does it get deleted from Blue Cherry?
Yeah, what will happen is you guys will come across to a very not pretty little message here that says file not found, which means that link will be broken. So ideally you want to be very thoughtful, and I think this is an action item. We had discussed it at the BPR. If it's not already on the AOD, David will want to list this out. You want to go through essentially a cleanup of the X Drive and a thoughtful process walkthrough of how the X Drive folders are laid out. So you'll want to keep this image where it's at every single time and not be moving those images around. Keep in mind too, it is handy if you've got a spec image that is attached to a lot of tech packs and you want to update that spec image across multiple designs. You can update and save to the same name, that image, and it will go ahead and update to all your tech packs. The caveat of that is opposite. If you just want to update one tech pack, you're going to need to create a duplicate file of it so that it's linked only to that tech pack. So it's important that you guys understand how those links work so you can use them to your advantage and not be surprised when suddenly you're running into a file not found or an image that's linked where it should not be linked. Any follow-up questions?
Actually, a great question and a great answer. So somebody has to own this as far as clean images in a certain file because Blue Cherry is going to point to that.
What does that mean?
I will talk about this during our
So right now we're constantly moving things over to the archive because we don't have enough space in our X Drive. So I don't know
I think
when
now,
we're.
Yeah, I think we, didn't Joe increase the X drive? And this is something internal that we can talk about.
Right.
Yeah, we have a lot of space now. We have almost 2.5 terabytes, which we could probably fit every movie that was ever made on our X drive right now. So we're good now. But what we want to do is, to this point, whatever we're using in Blue Cherry, that's where we want to keep a clean copy. We'll talk about that internally on Tuesday. Go ahead, Molly.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and delete this. I like to create good solid examples here. Moving on to the detail tab. So the detail tab is actually where you're gonna indicate the colorways of the design. Keep in mind, David, this is a comment for you, but if the team decides they want to rename this tab, you can absolutely rename it to colors so that people aren't confused. And we'll go through the colorway tab and how that really is going to act like more of a BOM for you guys. So there might be merit in renaming those tabs. So here's where you're going to indicate the colorway of the design. For the vinyl rooster tablecloth, we have one color, which is called multi. But within Blue Cherry, we give you the flexibility to have what's called a design color and a style color. So the design color might be your internal color that you call it within your team, or something like a Pantone reference that comes in handy if you're designing solid color programs. So ideally what would happen here is you guys are loading up design colors, the Pantone catalog, things that you use internally if you're using our Chroma standards or if you're using Walmart color standards or a specific Pantone color system. You would load them up here, and then you could search for that Pantone number by the code or by the color name, select it, and then it would be indicated here. So say that I did select that Pantone tofu, but then I wanted to call it multi, or think of, tofu and I wanted to call it white. And I think we did that in another one of the examples that's laid out here. Let me just go to the top of my record because I know that one's outlined. So here, tofu, and then my style color, and this is what gets promoted. I would select white maybe here in this example. The white is what is going to go on the customer's catalog. It's what's going to go and be associated with the color. This Pantone will essentially drop away, remain in the design record for you guys to reference at any given time, but this is what it will be called for sales. This is what it will be called from the customer perspective. It gives you that ability between design color and style color to say, this is my reference internally, this is my reference externally. The vendor can see both fields. So they can mark your samples as white, but they know that the standard to reference is your TCX for tofu. Similarly, you can assign a season to a color. So imagine that Happy Easter placemat is something that you guys look to refresh every single year. You've done it in a white colorway. You also decide to do it in a green colorway. Your season can change so that you know when those colors were created or when the colors were promoted or produced. It depends on how you guys want to use it, but season's there to kind of help segregate between the colorways and give a little bit more information. Colorways can be marked as well as active or inactive. So the example that I think that you were giving before on screens, screens might not be down to the colorway level, but maybe engravings are, or maybe there's some other types of design work where you want to mark the colorway active or inactive. You can mark that here. If it's been promoted to a style, that style number will stay here and live here, so you have that link between the design and the style. If it's promoted to the style, you'll have a check mark here. And then you can also indicate a target cost for design, target retail, or the existing design and cost retail that can promote to the style master. It really depends on how you guys want to do that. You can indicate a vendor to a specific colorway. This will, it gives you the ability to, you can rename this field, or you can mark out the number of the colorway. We also have something over here called the sequence. That's just numbering the colorways as you've entered it. And then this is a colorway note, and the vendor can see that. It can print to your tech pack. Transfer to colorway, I'm going to skip over slightly. You also have stage, so if you wanted to put that this one was promoted versus this one is in concept type of thing, you have that to indicate on this tab. Likewise, a lot of these fields that were on additional header are available to a specific colorway. So here, if your merch groups were outlined on the additional header, which will move to the header, it's applicable to the entire design, essentially. But if you need to change some of these fields at the color level, they're available here. And there's some additional images that you can attach here. You could specify that this color is in with a specific color palette, which I know you guys don't do today, but we have the capability to build color palettes within Blue Cherry. Here's your prices. It's the same stuff that's on that additional header tab pretty much. But if you come across something and you say, I actually really need that to be identified at the color level versus the style level, then we do have the flexibility for reporting and filtering purposes to indicate something different at the color level. Any questions here on the detail tab?
Molly, hold on 1 second. I'm just going to do a comm check, making sure I'm recording this.
This conference will now be recorded.
All right, you're good. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the colorway tab. So the colorway is really what's going to be representative of you guys' bill of material, which we'll reference as the BOM. So this is essentially the makeup of each finished good item that's represented in the Design Master. So if you're making, think of a window panel, if you're making a window panel, what is included in that finished good? It's going to be some kind of fabric. It might be grommets based off of styling. It's definitely thread to hold it together. So you would indicate each of those items or each of those raw materials on this colorway tab as your bill of material. So, and the way that this pulls together is based off of FTA records that you've already built. So you would indicate a component code. Here we've listed backing as an option, for example. You would indicate component type, being that backing, is it fabric, is it trim? You're just kind of giving the vendor a little bit more information about what that component is. You're going to list division. Here you're going to select raw materials, and then you're going to get all of your FTA records. I think we ended up building them in this division, so I think we've got a couple of them here. So say we would do slub linen texture, and maybe this doesn't say backing, but maybe it says base cloth would be a better example. It's the base cloth, it's fabric, it's in, it will be in the raw material division. That's just kind of a test environment type of snafu. Slub linen texture is the base cloth. You're gonna skip the raw material size and the raw material usage because you guys are not purchasing raw materials, so you get to bypass those two fields. And then over here is where you're gonna indicate the color of that component. We list this out because there is a possibility that you guys are creating designs where some of the components will vary by the colorway. So this is the colorway that we indicated on the detail tab, where you see tofu and white. It's listed at the top over here, and then you're going to say that component or the base cloth of slub linen texture is also white. Another good example would be if we had entered grommets in as a raw material. You might see grommets listed here, trim listed here, grommets listed here, and then maybe for the colorway white, those grommets are specifically an antique bronze color. Then maybe you've got another color over here where the grommets are brushed nickel. And the next color over here where the customer said, well, now I want, let me think, bronze grommets. So you can indicate that there are different colors on each colorway of that component. Any questions on the bill of material? It's that simple as far as you're going to add these records. They're going to be pre-built in the FTA because you guys will already have loaded some of that up. Then you'll add them here and list them out and indicate the color.
Now, is this definitely required for us, the bond for this?
The bill of material isn't required, but I would highly recommend it because if not, you're not including what the vendor needs to add or any of that placement information for the vendor to produce.
Are we, Elreen team, are we currently doing this now by cost component? So everything that goes into the finished good, are we costing that out?
It's not so much
Sometimes,
about cost.
sometimes we do, sometimes we don't.
But this isn't for costing. This is so that you have your menu and you know how to produce the item, which is
Yeah,
actually
no, I
quite
got that
important.
part. But what we want to do is, we want to track this? Is that how we're doing this?
Track it.
I'm not sure I follow.
I mean, if you wanted to say search for items that are made with linen, sure.
All right. Okay.
I think you'd want it searchable but not trackable because there's nothing really to track here.
Okay.
You're literally just telling the vendor, like this is essentially what you need to include on this item to be made. I know in a couple customers, they have requirements of specific like 6 to 8 SPI for thread. You might have an internal standard for that. Without something like this, I don't know in Blue Cherry where you would log like what's your grommet color, or does this item, how many, like what's the diameter of the grommets? That might be included on your sizes tab. But if you had variation of color to kind of things, or think of it if you had, I don't know, like a curtain which had piecing on it, the top portion of it is blue, the bottom portion of it is red on the blue colorway. Without placement of, and like a BOM, the vendor might leave some of that stuff out, or it just leaves it too vague. It's definitely best practice to include some kind of a BOM. It's not necessary to cost at a BOM level. Any more questions on the colorway tab? Okay, so moving on to construction. Construction is essentially a duplication of the images tab. And this is set up really if you are a customer that has a lot of spec dimensions or points of measurement. Construction specific images that might go on for pages and pages and pages. For your business based off of the BPR, I don't think that we'll be using this construction tab. So we will show David and Melissa a way in Screen Builder that you guys can hide this, or at the very least you could drop it to the very end so that users kind of know, walk through these 5 tabs, but I don't need to touch anything beyond this tab kind of thing. Any questions on construction, how you might use it? Okay, on to sizes. Sizes tab is exactly that. It's going to be your points of measure, your POMs, for the item that you're creating. So we talked a little bit about the sizes and dimensions at the very beginning. And hopefully this kind of helps clarify some things. So you guys are going to choose a size code. This is a loaded up just as an example. Let me go back to my vinyl tablecloth because I think it's going to make it easier. I'm just clicking to next. It keeps me on the sizes tab here, and it's flipped over to the vinyl rooster. That here up at the top. So within this sizes tab, what you guys are going to do is you're going to load your size code. If it's window, you're going to do it by the width of the window curtain is how we're going to set it up. So if you're making a 52, a 40 by, those types of things, you would load up that width here. For something like tablecloths and runners, we're going to keep it really basic, and you're going to load something like TBC for tablecloth or something like RUN for runner. By doing that, you're saying essentially that's what I'm making, a tablecloth, a runner, a window panel that's 52 inch wide. And it's going to bring you up an option to load a template. So we're going to pre-build these templates so that you guys don't have to enter this information on every single design. It's just going to go from template-based information. When you load a template, it's going to give you a couple options. So same product type templates only. What that means is this product type that you've indicated on the design header, it's going to look for the templates only that are associated with the tablecloth product type. The quickest way to kind of see what has been created that you might be able to apply. So here is where that style category on that sizes sheet comes into play. So if I was creating a vinyl tablecloth, I would check mark off my vinyl tablecloth box, click OK, and it loads all of my points of measure and tolerances for vinyl tablecloths. If I was creating for, say, Villeroy and Bach, a specific tablecloth for them, then you might see vinyl tablecloth and European tablecloth, and you can select European for a Villeroy and Bach design. Also, if you're just creating a solid, then you might see the option down here for standard, and you can just create that template or select that template that just has standard sizing. When you select that template, based off of that, you're going to see these dimensions over here load. And these are the dimensions or the size ranges that we've selected to use for a vinyl tablecloth. If you selected that European, you'd see something that starts with 68 by, because it's a wider or a longer enlarged size for European tablecloths. So it would preload that. And then when you click on these, you see the points of measure. So here we got width, length, and we've pre-built the umbrella diameter. The way these are set up is you're going to see a alpha character. So this stands for square, 52 by 52. The B stands for oblong, 52 by 70. See how we've got the width preset at 52, the length is designated as 70, and there's no umbrella diameter here because it is not an umbrella, it's just a straight oblong size. So that's not listed at all. Then we've got oval at a 60 by 80. We've got oblong at a 60 by 102. We have round at 70 by 70. And we have a U for umbrella, and that's the one where you can see the umbrella diameter is filled out. And this might not be accurate data. I was just setting it up for you guys an example. But this is the way that you would load all of your size data into Blue Cherry. Now there's a couple of things that you can do going back to this load template. You can do, say I want to load a template with using the same product type and templates only. You can look at all of your templates are in the system. Say that you want to create something new and different, or you want to copy it from another type of template. You can look at all product types in the system and look at templates only, so essentially seeing all your templates. You can look at same product types and templates in design. So this comes in handy. Say that you have already edited this template. So you load the template, and then if I needed to add something else, like say there was, not a great example, but say there was like a piping or a trim or something like that, I would add this in, and then I would add in that tolerance for it and add in the dimension. Now that I've edited this, when I save it, it's attached to that design. So next time I go to load that template, I can essentially steal it from an existing design. I can pick this, and it's going to tell me, like, do you want to load that template from here, or do you want to take it from another design? All product types, templates, and design, you're looking at everything that's in the system type of thing. The reason why designs aren't popping up here is because this happens to be the only design that I have a size, I have the sizes tab complete for. But you would see the designs coming up, so you can steal it from templates, you can steal it from other designs pretty easily. You can also copy POMs. A new POM, you can delete it, you can move these up and down. So if I do add something like piping or trim of any kind, I can kind of do that in order of sequence. And then you can save from here, and you've created that tech pack. Now keep in mind, if you do add something, then you need to, it appears on every single design, but you got to fill out your tolerances and your measurements. Easiest way to do that is click over here to the far right, do a Control C, click back over to the next size and do a Control V, and it should copy paste into there. Gets you around from having to do the data entry. There it goes. I had to hit my Control C again.
Well, I don't know what color you want to match, Jeff. That's ridiculous. Am I reading it correctly? Yeah.
Anybody have any questions on the sizes tab?
Did somebody repeat what Molly just said? Let's see. Come on. You're getting $20. One Hamilton. Who repeat what Molly just said?
She said that you can copy and paste the tolerances
That's
into
our.
each
You get
class.
$20. That's our star pupil right there. Come on, DG. Blaze the trail. Pull the other people in with you. You got them.
What'd you
Right,
say?
Ken, IOU. I'm broke. Go ahead, Mom.
Okay. Any questions on sizes?
No, I think we're good.
What this is really meant to do by giving you guys access to load templates is like you walk right past sizes pretty much, unless you have something that you're creating that is like new and different. But if you guys are creating what you're creating now by setting up things like, you know, the vinyl palm template and the European palm template and that your standard sizes, if you're just repetitively doing that stuff, it gets you past all that data entry. You're just selecting a size code and then template, and you're moving on past this tab. So it can be quick and easy. If you're creating something different, you're able to start with a template or an existing design and modify it. So also not creating it from scratch. So the next tab is sample evaluation. This is when I don't really love the order that these tabs default in. In order to create a sample evaluation, you need to assign it to a vendor. So I'm going to jump over to the vendor and RFQ tab. The way that you request a quote or assign it to a vendor is you're going to click new. Note that throughout Blue Cherry, I'm clicking new a lot of the time, but the copy function, we're going to step back to this and I can show you guys because it makes the data entry part a lot easier. So if you're hitting new, the only field that's required here is assignment of the vendor. So you guys will have all of your vendors in this table when we go live with Blue Cherry. You're going to select the vendor. It automatically dates your RFQ as the date that you created this new line. It's giving you a version here so that it's giving you kind of like a row and sequence to it. That's just how we keep track of things in CSC, which is the portal the vendors will log into. If you guys wanted to, you could do something like, you know, your die mills in here, so you could indicate specifically a secondary factory within manufacturer's code. I've also seen that field used for a couple other reasons, like anything in Blue Cherry, you could repurpose it. So maybe you wanted to request costing for a specific customer. You could indicate in your manufacturer code, rename it customer and say this quote is for BBB, therefore make sure that it's got all of the BBB packaging information included in your quote specifically. Vendor status, that we can set up and you'll essentially have a little bit more information on like where that vendor is in the process, if they're an approved vendor or if they're not an approved vendor. I don't think you guys will end up using that. Here you have design color and style color in case you guys need to cost by color. I don't think that's going to be something that you guys use again. I think it's pretty generic, but you might come across once or twice where you're requesting quotes by color for whatever reason. We have that capability here. Label is another field that you can use for a couple different purposes. You could also use that customer. You could drop it into this label field as well. Both of these are table driven. There'll be a label description, so that would be code and description. DIMPAC you guys will use. This goes back to those sizes again. So say that we wanted to request quotes in all of our sizes. The easiest way to do this would be to go down here. I'm just going to delete this guy, and it may or may not. There we go. And then I would copy and indicate the different DIM pack. Cost template is a good place for you guys to put in if you are costing in different ways, i.e. like direct import, POE, domestic. You can set those up as cost templates. That way you're telling the vendor, give me an RFQ for 52 by 70 oblong tablecloth for BBB, if you guys choose to set up label or manufacturer code, to direct import this item. PO due date, that's just a due date field. You can indicate that here if you want. Quantity, this is like about the time of year I would need it, and this is the volume that I want you to correspond with that RFQ quote. Vendor cost is what they're going to come back with. You can associate a stage. You can make this RFQ active or inactive. You can flag this as the primary vendor, and if you do before you promote, it will be the vendor that's associated on the style master. And then you've got a bunch of note fields or UDF fields. So you can define these as you want, and you can have the vendor complete this information directly. For the sake of designers, what you guys will need to do is come in here and associate a vendor in order for you guys to sample. It'll be up to you guys whether you designate your process is that design requests an RFQ for every single size or by color or whatever that is. It's completely up to you guys. There's also the ability to do some communication back and forth with the vendor through CSC, specifically on costing by using this memo function. And you can also create attachments here. So if you had cost breakdown forms, things like that that were specific to the customer that you wanted to send to the vendor so that they could complete beyond your normal RFQ, then you could attach those files here. They would pick them up, complete them, reattach them, and you would see them here the next day. Any questions on vendor and RFQ? These are vendor related fields up here. I don't think that you guys will end up using them because they're at the vendor and RFQ level. They're not down here. Like they're at a holistic kind of level for the RFQ, not down here on the individual DIM pack sizes. We'll probably screen build those away. Okay, so sample evaluation. This is Blue Cherry sample evaluation field. Again, we're just going to start from scratch. I'll create one for an example of new. So when you come in here after selecting, you're going to select the size that you want to sample in. I'm going to do the 52 by 70. And I'm just going to double click that to get a check mark next to it. Select OK. And you'll see that my size code defaults next to it. And that's the size that I'm going to be choosing. In color selector, you're going to see the colors that you've already indicated on the detail tab. If they don't exist on the detail tab, they will not appear here. And that speaks to, again, like making sure that these tabs are in logical order. You don't want to have users jump around. So you can select the color that you've already indicated on the detail tab that's associated with the design, or you can choose color independent. The reason why color independent is there is because sometimes for things like a quality sample, you're not really concerned at all about what color it is. You're not judging it by color. Maybe you have a sample that's specified by the customer that all they're going to do is measure it and you don't care what color it is. So you can always select color independent. For the most part, I imagine that you guys are going to be selecting by color. When you select that, it's going to default the sample color and give more information. This is like your defaulted data from that. Then you're going to select sample type. We have one preloaded in here based off of the BPR. We chose design, pre-production, production, and photography will be your options. So you're going to select one of those. You're going to choose a factory, and that's going to default from what you have outlined in your vendor RFQ tab. So what that's doing essentially is it's saying you can't request a sample from a vendor unless you've requested an RFQ from them already. It's kind of a fail-safe to make sure your process is kept intact as far as, oh, we have a sample, we fell in love with it, it's so pretty, but we can't afford it. It's always forcing you to indicate a vendor over there first and foremost and request that RFQ. Sample request dates, the next field. So if you left click this and then you right click it, it fills in with today's date. Easiest shortcut. The rest of these fields are kind of optional. So sample receive dates, we're going to leave that as empty because you're not going to fill it in before you've requested the sample. Sample evaluated, same thing. Tech designer may or may not be applicable. You could assign a tech designer to it here for once that sample comes in to check out the sample. Same with measurer. You can do the same if you have somebody that is a designated measurer. Maybe you have a couple different people in the company that you work with specifically or for your division for reporting purposes. You can do some tracking and things using those two fields. Then you've got UDF sample data. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 here. I would recommend one of those would be dictated for sample ETA so that the vendor completes that on CSC. You wouldn't see it here on the screen builder. You can remove it. And then the vendor would complete that ETA, but you've got to build that field out saying that that's a specified date. If you had other sample dates that you wanted to track, then you can dictate them here. I've seen some companies will use these as almost like a TNA for production. So if you wanted like the due date for specific milestones that were associated that you needed things by, you could indicate those here. I like it keeping it pretty simple with request date, ETA date type of thing, and maybe an actual ship date as well, so that you can measure whether the vendor is hitting their ETAs or whether they're constantly telling you you're going to have the sample early and then ending up shipping it late. Sample quantity, so you can do anything from 1 to I think 99 here in sample quantity. And then received quantity you'll fill in later, and then there's also a another UDF down here. So you'll select OK. And that's going to create the sample request on this line. And then you can see the only dimension here that's active. All of the other ones have the little red X. The only one that is there for the ability to be measured is the one that you've indicated is active. So what we can do on CSC or your vendor portal is we can tell your agent, we can tell the factory that they always have to measure the sample before they send it to you. And they have to enter those measurements here. They would enter the measurements into agent. It would then calculate the variance with taking into consideration your tolerance, like how far it's off. You can indicate revisions and you can do notes here as far as measurements. When that sample comes in, you can also, they can attach images. You can attach images here. If you have comments on, the screens are off, the color, those kinds of things, you can add those all here in revision notes and images. So this would be all things sample, kind of live in this tab. Later on, if you would decide to if you would have filled in any of those fields, all of them are seen here. If you would have decided to give the vendor access to complete something like sample ETA, you'd see it right on this screen with the date. I would recommend doing something like, again, that actual ship date from the vendor and then having them complete in the FedEx tracking number, UPS tracking number. That way it's associated within all the data on Blue Cherry, and you can create tracking reports and things like that out of it. Any questions on samples? Note that when you guys do these, that they are color and size specific or color and dimension specific. So if you wanted to sample more than one of these, you would then copy it and you would select a different size. You can make this one as inactive and say, I also want to sample the 52 by 52, click OK. It's copied everything else that's associated with that sample request, and then you just click OK. You can kind of go down the line and select the different sizes and the different colors that you need to, just changing minimal fields. Any questions so far? Okay, onward and forward to cost.
Wait, there were no questions on samples? So anyone besides Nicole DG? What was the last thing Molly said? Come on, guys, we're a team. I know this is the initial stages and it all looks new. Actually, besides Melissa also. No Nicole TG, no Melissa. No answers are wrong.
I guess I have one question. So when you're sending this to the vendor, are you attaching a link, or are they, like, how are they inputting the information that we're asking them for?
So they have a browser-based portal. It looks quite different than Blue Cherry, but the structure is all the same. So they'll go to a tab within that browser-based portal. They would see all of the sample requests that you've created that are open. They can filter it for those that are closed if they want to go back and reference anything. But they've got a bunch of different filters where they can go in and search, say, by the sample request date, search by the color, search by the design name kind of thing. And then they can export it to Excel. And then they can enter also like the ETA and the tracking information. And it's a real-time update from CSC to Blue Cherry. So as soon as they enter in data, you would be able to see it within CSC.
Okay, so we would see.
Go ahead, sorry.
We would be able to see immediately, like, the changes that they made to this.
Correct.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Think of like online banking. If you guys online bank, or actually, let's use a different analogy, Amazon. If you purchase something from Amazon, as soon as you place the order, you're going to need an email link and where it is at any given time. We're not ready for this part for onboarding the vendors, but what Molly's doing is explaining how this works so that, you know, we're only going to onboard, Melissa's going to decide which vendors to onboard first, and we'll test it out. We're going to work out some of the bugs. And then once you guys are okay, then we'll slowly onboard one vendor, you know, per every couple of weeks or whatever you guys decide as a team.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
So after we go through the entire Design Master too, Corinne, I'll make sure that we show you guys like how to export the actual PDF tech pack to the vendor as well. And that'll go to CSC, or you guys are able to download that and send it via email if you have a vendor that is not set up on CSC. I think you guys will quickly realize though how powerful CSC is, and it's nice to not have to, you know, once you've done all this work, to then have to export and then write an email to them. If they're already set up on CSC, they self-service, like you push a button, click it, and then they log in later and see all the work that you've done. If you want to add,
does
go ahead.
What? Like answer a question, like specifically, or do they have to click through and search for what they need to answer?
There's a couple of different ways to do it. Normally what we do is we kind of like pre-select a filter for them so that they see what has been newly created by you guys as of yesterday because of the date change. So they would be able to see like what was created today. It's like presetting a filter for them so they could go and click through the tabs and see like, was there anything new for tabletop, any new sample requests, any new da-da-da-da-da, any new questions for me to respond. And then they go through the portal and they answer them, update ETAs, you know, send you back communication type of thing. And then they can log out of the portal and they're kind of done for the day.
Cool.
Let's see. So quickly before we leave this, so then when you guys get the samples in and you want to make comments on them, you go down to these POM codes. If you are measuring them and your agent or the vendor is not, then you guys can come in here and you can enter in your measurements and say, you know, it was within tolerance, it was out of tolerance. You can attach those images by clicking new image, and then you put them on your X drive essentially, and you could upload them here. Maybe you've got some images that it's really common, you know, to have the measuring tape and show them how it's out of tolerance, or circle it on a screen to you're showing like the engraving is off here, or color placement, this is, you know, completely incorrect, whatever it is. You can upload those images. You can make notes in your comments down here, and so that it's attached with that image. Or you can make a general revision note on that sample where you can say, hey, this did not measure correctly, the engraving was also off, and the colors were off. I need a new sample for the customer in a week. And and you can indicate all of those revision notes. On these lines as well, once you get the sample in, there is also your revision status, and that's where you're going to indicate whether it was approved or rejected or approved with comments kind of thing, and also who's approving that. So it's stamped with that user's name as well of who went in here and made that decision to approve it or reject it type of thing. That way they know who to communicate back and forth with on the comments, and for record purposes, you know, you guys can go back and have discussions about it if needed type of thing. All of your samples that would be associated with the design would be here. So you may see design, and then I think once Melissa's team copies it over to a production tech pack, pre-production, production, and photography would live over in that
Hey, Molly,
design.
sorry, for the, like if you were to put all of your comments in, does their would it automatically give you like a date stamp on it, or do you have to input that these are the comments for this date?
So that data audit log that we were talking about before would log a date that you entered revision status and approved by type of thing.
Oh, great. Okay.
That's really only visible for the most part on the tech pack at the top. If you turn it on, you would see up here kind of like the change log. Here it is actually. It's not set up right now, so it won't find any criteria, but you could see where the user did that. That wouldn't be necessarily visual to the vendor. So that might be where you use one of these sample UDF dates, and you would create one like approved date or comments provided on or something like that, because that way the vendor can see it and you guys can see it more clearly.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Anything else before we leave sample evaluation? Okay. The next tab is cost. So Blue Cherry has the ability to to keep an entire kind of like cost sheet for your item before it goes, after it goes into production. It could also be before, if you wanted to cost designs at this level. The fields here are completely up to you guys. Really what it goes by is it's division specific. It'll default to the design. It'll also ask for that cost template. So is it a direct import cost, a domestic cost, or a POE? It can be specific to a product type or a contractor. Also a style at the label level, the color, or the DIMPAC level. You've got a lot of cost UDF fields as well, where you can specify specifically what that cost sheet is for. Over here, you can choose it as your master cost sheet. You can mark it as active or inactive. You can mark it specific to a season and also to a ship to. So if you guys start to do multi-destination, then you're going to want to do, say, domestic to the West Coast, domestic to the East Coast. There's probably different costs that are associated with those for you guys. You can choose to update your standard costs that would take this cost sheet that's associated with the item and update your standard cost that's associated within the system for later down the road with ERP, so your production order entry, and also to your style master. You can mark a cost sheet as final, and you can list in here whether that cost approval has been confirmed, unconfirmed, and you're just putting it in there for somebody to view, or neither of those. It tracks revisions automatically. And then also you can associate merge groups with the cost sheet. Sometimes people will use those merge groups for all different reasons. So if the cost UDFs up here were not enough, you might see some of those merge groups and item attributes being used at a merge group level. I don't think that'll get, that you guys will be doing that. Then down on the detail level over here, you would create new. Just like you do with size templates or PLM templates, you would create a template for your cost sheets here. And those templates, those cost templates, would essentially mimic direct import, POE, or domestic. So we can get more into this in the sessions with David and Melissa specifically, but essentially what you guys are going to do is all the columns that are currently on your cost sheet, you would create a different cost category for them. You can choose to default rate or default costs, or you can add in formulas here to calculate based off of how you want your cost sheet to work. And here's some of the ways that you would do that. That's all I'm going to go into really on the cost tab. Because it's so specific to function, I think for you guys, you're just going to stick with the vendor RFQ for the most part. And then we'll get more into costing during that specific session. Does anybody have any questions on cost? Okay. So for the most part, we're going to go into now, based off of the agenda, we're going to go into creating new styles and copy from existing styles. And then we'll talk a little bit about reporting, being the different kinds of tracking reports you can create in Blue Cherry and the different kind of communication reports. And really this discussion is meant to create discussion amongst your team about how you guys want to set up your processes in conjunction with Blue Cherry.
Yeah, let's talk about that just real quick. And this is going to be an internal conversation, the natural flow from design number to promotion to actual style creation, UPC generation, production. So this is probably going to be a design / production discussion when Brian's back. Go ahead.
Okay, so talking about what we really did there was we walked through essentially how to create a new design. You guys did a little bit of that before we broke. A lot of those fields, it's pretty brief to create a design. Once you guys get a lot of this screen designer stuff type worked out, where you've decided what fields you want to have completed and which ones nobody really needs to see, then this will look a lot cleaner and probably make a lot more sense to you guys. But it's important to see the whole system, I think, so that you guys can start to dream up what it looks like for you guys. But if you don't want to start from scratch like we did today, the best way to get around that is to copy. And as you guys start to build tech packs and build designs in the system, copy function is a great way to move you forward quickly. So if you want to copy a design, you're going to go up to the header and you're going to click copy design. So right now it's sitting on division and this design, so it's always going to have those grayed out. You're going to choose whether you want to copy to a new design, in which case all of these other fields are going to gray out, or if you want to copy to another division. For you guys, you're most likely never going to copy to another division because we've already said you're just going to have raw material and you're going to have one single division that's out there. So you're going to select the new design. If this was where you guys were manually creating your design number, that would be open for entry. Since you're automatically creating it, it's grayed out because it's going to assign a new number for you without you guys having to do anything. Then down here, you're going to select the components to copy. This mirrors very much so the tabs that are over here. So do you want to copy your design details? Remember, details is where you're going to indicate colorways, where we had that Pantone of tofu and the colorway of white. Say you're creating another design and all of those colors, you want to create the exact same colorways for this one. So you can select that. For colorway, I don't think we saved anything actually on the colorway, which is why it's grayed out, but you could copy over your colorway. So your BOM work is already all done. A great instance to think about is if you're creating a design that's very similar, maybe one or two components on your colorway have to be changed out. Maybe this is not a grommet panel, it's only a rod pocket panel. Still probably a good idea to copy the colorway and then just go delete that one line in your colorway tab. Much easier than having to recreate it from scratch. You can copy over design vendors. So again, if you're, it's going to the same vendors, or you want to copy RFQs from one design to another, maybe you guys standardize your RFQ requests so that you're always requesting in a 52 by 70 vinyl tablecloth. Well, then it's pretty much done for you. If you only have one vinyl vendor and you already want to request that cost, it'll copy over the design vendor tab. Same with your sizes. Even if you're only changing minor things, copy it over and make life easier on you. You can select a new size code here. So if you had selected a window panel with a 52 inch and now you wanted to make a 40, you can change that over here and it will default it. It may or may not allow you to copy the entire size because sometimes there's a mismatch. If you don't have another size code set up for the size template that you've loaded, that can cause an error. So just be mindful about what you're copying and what makes sense within Blue Cherry. Measurements is going to be your PLM codes, construction, which is grayed out because there's nothing saved there again. If you're using that and there was, you could copy that over. Images, you could copy that over if you've got generic images in there that might apply to it and you just want to replace primary. You can copy over your stages, meaning this stage at the header and also any other stages that have been associated throughout the remaining tabs. You can copy over header memos. So just like we were talking about the memos on the RFQ tab that are related to costing, there are memos up here and we'll go through those next. There's memos up here that you guys can communicate back and forth on and enter in like history about the item that will stay with this design forever and ever and always that everybody can see. You can copy over those header memos. And then you can also link up specs. This has to do with this, again, the sizes tab and changing over multiple tech packs at one time. It's kind of like a higher level feature that will go on. We'll go over in maybe like the additional features section. I don't think you guys will use it, but it's good for you guys to know in case you run into an instance where you need to. So I'm just going to copy over everything to that new design. You also have the ability to do a new revision for the same design. So if you're creating a revision of a design, I don't think you guys will use this again, but if you're running into where you want to create another design and here's the updated version of it type of thing, but it's going to keep that same design number and it's probably going to put another character at the end of it. Again, I don't think you guys will use it. So if you click OK, copied over all the information. It brought over my design header info. It brought over my merch groups. It brought over my images. It brought over my detail color. It didn't bring over my colorway because I didn't have anything. It didn't bring over construction. I didn't have anything. I put a new size code on there, so it didn't bring over my size code, or maybe I didn't check that box last minute. It will not copy over sample evaluation. It is not going to assume that you want 90 samples that you had on that last design. So this is not a tab that you can copy over. And it did copy over your vendor RFQ. So this is actually your second one. See how it's got table that your new design number. It's not actually going to assign it until I hit save. So that save is the key feature for creating a new design number. Now, say I copy it over and I look through these tabs and I'm like, it's not actually as similar as what I wanted to. You can do two things. You can delete it and copy it from a different design or undo it because I haven't saved it yet. You could undo it and it won't create that copy at all. You have the ability to go back, or you can come in here and you can edit it as heavy as you want, essentially. So you could then delete this, copy it, use the copy functions within here to get you to the next step. There's a million different ways to kind of do that, but it's up to you guys, and the copy feature is pretty powerful within Blue Cherry to be able to do those things. Any questions?
Yeah, so if you delete something, does that design number also get deleted? Or is that like that design number's been used and it'll never be used again?
I believe it can reassign to that number again, but to tell you the truth, I haven't tested that out.
Can I answer this one?
Yeah.
Probably in the beginning, we're not going to want to delete anything. You just going to want to deactivate it. And there's a reason why. This is a great question. This also pertains to sales orders and production orders from Melissa's team and also my team. We're gonna learn for 6 months. We're gonna understand this program, but we're also gonna make mistakes. But in order for us to figure out where our mistake is, we have to do a logical trail back, electronic trail to what happened. So right now, see where it says active? You're gonna want to uncheck that and make it deactive, but don't delete anything. I'm actually not gonna give anybody the opportunity to delete because I have seen this in the past. Accidentally, people will delete stuff and they're tied to certain records in the database. So right now, just let's make it a rule of thumb as a business decision. We're just going to deactivate that for now.
Okay.
Here's the answer to the question, though, if we test this out. Whether or not it's going to, like, create a copy to this. Is it going to assign to 003 again, or is it going to assign to 004? And it skips over the number. It knows that it's already been assigned once, so it just pulls to the next. But to David's point, it's up to you guys if you want to give the delete rights out. Within Blue Cherry, if I delete this header record, I delete it forever, and I delete all of the associated data. There's not a good way to go back and pick this stuff up. So if this is a design that you guys have had around for 5 years, and there's memo notes attached to it, and there's sample evaluations and colors and all that kind of stuff, it's gone. And that's why when you do it, when you click delete, it's going to say, and these are really key kind of navigations or features to go through, it's going to ask you how you want to apply your delete. Do you want to delete the current record only, or do you want to delete all in your search results? If I click all in your search results, and I click OK, it's got a caveat here. So this is mass delete. Some of you will have access to this, not very many at all, because it can be dangerous. But even with this, it's asking you to confirm that you want to delete. So you would have to type in here, the system will now delete. You have to type in the word, and you have to validate how many records that you want to delete in order to mass delete something. But for current record only, if you give users access to delete, you can delete individual item records in case something was created by mistake. You don't give them access to delete a single record, then yes, you'd have to come up with something active or inactive, or you'd have to go to the admin and say, hey, I accidentally copied this over. I don't really want it. Can you delete this record for me?
Okay, cool.
Okay, so we went over pretty much new copy and how powerful that is. Save, and notice that all of these hotkeys are appearing as I scroll over it. Undo, in case you've done some work on a single tab. Delete, there's that. Additional info. This goes down to the merchandise group, so it's a quick way really to get to the bands here that are on the additional header. So notice how these bands are the exact same. In case you want to navigate to those. Related info is workflow calendars, and then RFQ, lifestyle, and SKU. You guys aren't costing, to my knowledge right now, by the SKU level, meaning the color, size, label combination. So that will probably never come up, which is great. We'll keep it sweet and simple. And workflow calendars, as of now, I don't think you guys are going to use them because you really have that one key handoff between design and production. But it may be something when we go through it that you guys are interested in. So now when we go to tasks, so we're talking about how to now, we put all this in Carry, how do we send it to the vendor? You go to print, then you can print preview your tech pack. And what we do is we custom format all of your, everybody's tech pack. So whatever you guys use today, if you have a standardized format, which I don't believe is in place, or maybe it has been put in place since the BPR, we could recreate that in Blue Cherry. Or we can work with you guys to create the custom format, just kind of based off of some of the best practices that we've seen across our customers. So you can physically print this, and it will print out a PDF version of this Design Master or Tech Pack. You can also export it. So if you click export, here's where you're going to choose your report package. It can default essentially to your custom format. You would choose the page that you're deciding to export. We'll keep it really simple. You guys will have one or two options there. And then in these filters, and it's not appearing now because we've still got to do some setups, but you would indicate like what vendor you want it to send to, what specific information within it you want to send to. Pretty much the default here is like you're going to select the vendor that you want to send it to. You can send it to multiple vendors at once. So if in the vendor RFQ you said, well, I've got 2 main vinyl vendors, I want them both to quote on this, you can send them both the tech pack. That way they can see it. So export to vendors, a lot of this stuff isn't going to work until we go through these features. But here's export where you can send it to vendors that might not be signed up for CSC. Here's export for vendors where you're going to send it to vendors who are set up in CSC. Then you can email it externally as well. And you might want to set up all your vendor contacts to make that easy. So there's a couple of different reasons why you would use each of those features, but at the end of the day, you can get it to who you need to get it to. Inbox is dropping it over to the command center over here within your document inbox. On task, you also have the ability to mass update. That'll probably be grayed out for most of you. Quick task is also related to mass updates, so that will be grayed out.
Molly, the vendor will be able to like reply basically into the system then, or no?
If they are a CSC vendor, yes. If they are not a CSC vendor, then no, they can't.
So then we'll have to just update it manually if they're not.
Yes.
Okay.
That's why CSC becomes such a powerful tool, because you can avoid the manual entry from the vendor data. They do it themselves, it updates the query, and everybody's happy and moves on with life.
David, will there be an SOP in regards to that? Because there's going to be a lag time in which we won't have all vendors, and there may be some vendors that are never in the system.
Yeah, Melissa, that's you and I discussed this. I think it's a discussion for you, me, Brian, and probably someone in design, because we have to establish the PO lead times. Okay.
We can also discuss it tomorrow in our CSC meeting if we want to hash it out a little bit more. Finalized design, that's if you guys are choosing to what we call finalized design, which it prevents any further modifications of the design and essentially locks it down and says, this is what is happening and no further changes are allowed to it. The changes is that audit history that I was talking about. So if you click that and we have it turned on, you'll be able to see who's made what changes when. Also the initial create is there, those types of things. Again, if you delete the tech pack, you lose all history associated with it. Attachments up here. So this is the header memo that we were talking about. So the way that we set this up is you can come in here and you can open up essentially a new communication with the vendor based off of a note type. So you could say, send this to CSC, that's visible to CSC vendors. You can choose your status, whether it's open or closed. You can default a template. If you want to say the same thing to every vendor, or you have a template for communication for whatever reason, you can upload that template. What I recommend you guys do here is you would date and initial the communication. So you could say on 3/25, sample was sent. Sample sent for sourcing purposes via FedEx tracking. That way, when the vendor receives not only the tech pack, they also have the information of the physical sample that is coming to them. They have the tracking number. You don't have to write a separate email. And also, this information stays with the design or with the tech pack forever and ever and always. So based off of the note status, and this kind of goes into the next discussion on reports, we can very easily set up what's called communication reports based off of the header memos. And what it'll do is it'll look throughout the system in a division based off of a product category or based off of your merch groups. We can set that all up. And this report can be sent to a group of people. It can be sent to the vendor. It can be sent to your internal teams once a day, where it's just looking at all of the open memo notes in the system, where you can see if the vendor has communicated back to you and said, Here, like, hey, based off of the tracking information, this was actually sent to India instead of China. Can you resend the sample? They would go into to CSC. They could see all that information. They could write back to you, and then that report populates every day with that information. So it's just kind of it's a way to take all the emails that you guys get today, and it drops them into one singular report, so that you have less emails in your inbox, but you also have it all consolidated, so you can go in there and you can respond, or you're tracking open communication. You know when you sent an email and you're expecting the vendor to follow up, but they never do. And then 2 weeks down the road, you're like, hey, they never responded to me about those color comments. Like, what is happening? Now we're 2 weeks behind, and 2 weeks is like an exaggeration, but maybe it's 5 days and you ask for a response back the next day, but it got lost in the shuffle. If you're doing something like these communication reports, it stays on there and shows that the vendor has not responded. And if you're looking at it every day, then you can go back and write a note and say, hello, urgent, need response, and kind of like nudge them further, so that you're making sure that the communication is being sent back and forth on a consistent basis. Nothing's getting lost in the shuffle. So that's a concept that worked really well at my prior company, and I would recommend it, especially if you guys are using CSC. If you're not using CSC, the memo notes is still a great place for you guys to track information about the design that will stay with the design forever and always. So if 2 years you come back to it, you know who that vendor was, who the sample was sent to, you know, those kinds of things. Even if it's a week later and the vendor hasn't received it, you can go back and reference the tracking information really easily by accessing the memo notes. You also have the ability to create attachments. So if there are engraving files that are large TIFF files or something like that, you can create that attachment there. It's almost like a Dropbox that's attached to the design. So the vendor can, again, go into CSC and they can pick up that artwork without you having to try to send it via email, without you having to try to upload it to anything. The attachments can be sourced directly from your X drive, or they can be sourced directly from any file, because it's essentially like Dropbox. So even if you don't have it in the X drive, you can attach it here. This might also work well for forms that your customers are requesting that you complete for item information. Instead of you filling it out, the vendor can fill it out. Just attach the form, they complete it, they attach it back, and then it appears here, and it's always living with this design for history and purposes like that. This is if you want to attach a seasonal color palette. I don't think you guys are going to be using color palettes right now. Color palettes are pretty cool though, because you can streamline the palette that's used across either a product category or across the whole company. If you are in agreement on, you know, using the Pantone color of the year, or, you know, specifically this red to make the showroom look cohesive, you know, those kinds of things, you can set up those color palettes in Blue Cherry. And the last option is layout. So you've got options here, and this is relating back to your search results. So you can do a list, or you can do a tabbed view here. And I think I might just have a slow machine there. There we go. Where you can show filter, and it just gives you a different format for result options. So here you can see it, where it's going to change over from card view to grid view type of thing. Any questions so far? Okay, so the last thing that I want to go through is another report type of capability. So we talked a bit about communication reports. So those memo notes, they live on the header, and they also live on RFQ. Those are separate memos. They also live on samples. And really you'll see those here on the individual sample line. So part of the design process is you guys dictating, do you want to use those communication reports, or do you want to use memos internally, and which ones do we want to use? Do we want to use these ones, those ones, all those? Definitely the header memo is a great place because you're driving traffic to one location for all the details, but there might be some reasons for you guys to use the vendor RFQ and the sample evaluation ones as well. There's also notes on the colorway detail, but you can see how this gets a bit, I think in a smaller company like you guys, it can get a little overwhelming to specify, you know, we're going to put notes here, we're also going to put notes here, we're going to put notes here and here. You want to try to drive traffic as a best practice to one singular location, and that header memo might be the place. The other type of reports that we can do are tracking reports. And one of the best examples of a tracking report is going back to sample evaluation, where based off of the dates that you guys have outlined here, we can populate daily reports for you guys. This works really well with CSC, and we'll have to be thoughtful about the process because you're not launching with full vendors from the get-go. What we can probably do is set it up and then let you guys kind of see how it works. But essentially what would happen is we'll set up a report to say by product category, since you guys are separated like that from a staffing perspective. And we would say if my merch group one, if my product category was tabletop, send it to the tabletop group every day. Show me all of the open sample requests that do not have a revision status at all. So meaning the sample has not been received yet or hasn't been commented on either way. And what that'll do is it'll create a list in Excel or in a PDF that you guys can access every day to say, you know, we don't have to go into each design. We can see where those samples are at any given point in time on a daily basis. It's tracking it for us. Then as we receive those samples, go in and select a revision status, then that sample request will essentially fall off of your listing because you've already actioned it. So it's almost kind of working as like it's a tracking report for everything that's open and everything that needs to be done, everything you're waiting on from the vendor. And it's all automatically processed through Blue Cherry data. Do a very similar thing through the vendor and RFQs. So if you wanted a tracking report, if you had somebody that was very focused on costing, you could do the same thing. How many open RFQs do I have out here? The vendor hasn't responded to, and that would give you an open list. And then once they filled in the cost, then you could remove it from the report. You could also use something like the vendor status if you were looking for, you know, stuff that needed to be rebid. Even though they filled in the vendor cost, like you can open up the line again and ask them to rebid for whatever reason because you entered a memo here that says like your costing is way off. We're getting a similar quote from a vendor that's 30% less. Like go back and rework your quote. You're giving them another option by updating the line and opening up the status for them to essentially take that cost that's way too high, erase it from the system, and give you a better price. Similarly, you could also copy the line and give them another chance to rebid. But if you're saying like that's pretty much like a junk quote, you got to do better than that type of thing, then you could do that too. And you could add a vendor status as like rebid or something like that. And you can track all of that data. Other reports that you can do once you guys get designs loaded up here, your current tracking reports that you're doing today, those will essentially, they can live in Blue Cherry and be automatically populated for the most part because you're tracking things like samples, design work, and costing. All of that would be information that you're entering in Blue Cherry already. So a lot of those line lists or WIP reports that you're doing could be recreated out of Blue Cherry, and you don't need to manually update Excel logs over and over again. Just based on the flow of data through Blue Cherry, you guys would populate it and it would be sent to your inbox, or you could run it ad hoc through Blue Cherry and pull up a real-time live data type of report. Any questions? Any concerns? Anybody still there?
I'm still here. Come on, guys. Any
We're
questions
here.
at all? Who was that? Was that
No,
Lou?
I think that was really clear. No, it was Nicole.
Nicole? It was pretty clear, right? All right. So my goal was to get our all of our IDs set up in the training. We're going to follow Molly's direction now. We're going to start to put all of our referential data in the training, and then once we're okay with that, we're going to copy what we funnel down into test, and then the test is how we're going to set up what's called our conference room pilot. So think of it like a class. If we took a class in college, we have the syllabus, we have all the work. We're starting to do the lab work now next week. And then after we get an idea of how everything works, we'll build up our libraries, digital libraries. And then once we're good in training, we have a good feeling for that, we'll funnel them down to what we really want to do. And then we'll have to redo them again in the test database. That test database is going to be our midterm exam. And then what we're going to do is we're going to gauge, not to point fingers at anyone, where our strengths are and where our weaknesses are. The weaknesses is stuff we're going to have to train more on. And then the strengths we're going to know as a team, this is what we got. We can take that off our checklist. And we're going to have one more conference room pilot probably around June, beginning of June. And then what we'll do is we'll say, are we ready to go live? And if we are, we're going to begin the cutover plan. But for right now, probably give me another, hopefully just another day, and I'll have the training log on set up, and we'll go from there. Any other questions, comments? Molly?
I think that's it for today, guys. That was a lot of information. I would say, like, as soon as you guys get your training logins, go in here and play around. You know, think about how this is going to be set up. And I think, David, if you want to stay on the line, we can stop the recording, but kind of talk about assignments and things like that if you want to flesh that out as kind of next steps.
Action item sounds good. All right, guys, everyone else can go, and the recordings will be saved to YouTube and also in the share drive. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Molly, hold on one second. This actually, it's not. It's still saving. Been having technical difficulties a little bit here.
Monday. I feel like technical difficulties always happen on Monday.
I think this is still recording. That's the problem.
Yeah, it says it is.
All right, let me call you on your phone. All right?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, bye.
Okay, speak to you soon.